After lending huge loans, Chinese regime now spends $240 billion bailing out Belt and Road countries. Apple CEO meets with Chinese Commerce Minister for talks on supply chain. Ying-jeou visits Sun Yat-sen Mausoleum, Peace and Revival of China for people on both sides. China to crack down on malicious online business reviews. Hong Kong has first protests since 2020.
The Chinese regime heavily pushes its lending as part of soft power for business and influence. But with a growing list of developing nations with debt problems, Beijing now relies on its huge foreign exchange reserves as a source of emergency funds to bail out many countries it has been lending to. According to a new study by researchers from the World Bank, Harvard Kennedy School, Aid Data, and the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, the Chinese regime spent at least $240 billion in 128 rescue loan operations to bail out 22 developing countries between 2008 and 2021. Almost 80% of the rescue lending was issued between 2016 and 2021 to middle-income countries such as Argentina, Mongolia, and Pakistan. The study finds that Chinese rescue loans to countries in debt distress surged from less than 5% of its total overseas lending in 2010 to 60% in 2022. Argentina received the most bailout lending from China, with $111.8 billion, followed by Pakistan with $48.5 billion, and Egypt with $15.6 billion. 9 countries received less than $1 billion. Unlike established international lenders like the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, or the World Bank, the Chinese regime's rescue loans differ from them. These loans are opaque, have high interest rates, and target debtors of China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. U.S. officials have repeatedly condemned China for engaging in debt trap diplomacy that burdened debtor countries with excessive debt. Chinese firms often carry out these infrastructure projects using Chinese engineers, workers, and equipment. The Chinese regime has lent hundreds of billions of dollars to developing countries, but lending has slowed since 2016 because many projects have failed to pay financial dividends. One of the study's authors, Carmen Reinhardt, said, "Beijing is ultimately trying to rescue its own banks. That's why it has gotten into the risky business of international bailout lending." The study also finds that borrowing from Beijing for emergency credit is not cheap, often 5%, while a typical rescue loan from the IMF carries a 2% interest rate. The study also points out another controversial issue. Central banks of these countries may artificially use unreported People's Bank of China or PBOC swap line drawings to inflate their foreign exchange reserves. China has been negotiating debt restructurings with some BRI countries, such as Zambia, Ghana, and Sri Lanka, but has been accused of holding up the processes or imposing harsh conditions. In response, it has called on the World Bank and the IMF to offer debt relief to those countries.
The CEO of Apple Incorporated, Tim Cook, met with China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao on Monday, March 27th at the Chinese Communist Party-hosted China Development Forum, Bloomberg reported. The Commerce Ministry says both sides exchanged views about Apple's development in China and stabilizing the industry supply chain. At the forum, Wang told Cook that China would continue to open up and give good services to foreign companies, including Apple. On Saturday, Cook told an audience that Apple and China have grown together and the relationship is symbiotic. He then visited an Apple retail store in Beijing. Here, SCMP said many young Chinese people warmly greeted him. The newspaper said that since Cook began retail expansion in China about a decade ago, Apple products have become popular in the region. About 20% of Apple's sales are from Greater China. However, Apple closed its Foxconn factory last year due to the pandemic. The firm relocated much of its iPhone production to India. It's Cook's first trip since the pandemic and shows Apple's commitment to the Chinese market. According to Cook, Apple will expand its investment in educational projects in China to $14.5 million or 100 million yuan.
Former Taiwanese President Ma Ying-jeou arrived in China on March 27th for the first historic visit of current and former presidents since the 1949 Communist Revolution. According to China Times, a handful of people from an independent group held a protest press conference at Taiwan Taoyuan Station before Ma's departure. The group even clashed with police before being taken away. The opposition ruling party of successor Tsai Ing-wen criticized the trip, saying it was inappropriate, as Honduras had just ended ties with the island in favor of China. According to CNA Taiwan, Deputy Director of the China-Taiwan Affairs Office Chen Yuanfeng welcomed Ma at Shanghai Pudong Airport. The former president's Taiwan delegation said the visit does not include a meeting with Beijing. Ma Ying-jeou took 30 Taiwanese students with him on this trip, and only a handful of staff members accompanied him. Before leaving Taiwan, Ma told the reporters he was very happy to be going on a trip where he would talk to students and pay respects to the graves of his ancestors in China. Ma emphasized that this trip aims to promote peace between the two countries through the enthusiasm and interaction of young people. According to China Times, Ma visited the mausoleum of Sun Yat-sen in Nanjing on his first morning in mainland China and gave a speech there. Ma ended his speech praising Sun Yat-sen with a call that it is the responsibility of the Chinese people on both sides of the strait to make peace and revive China. During the 12 days on the mainland, Ma's delegation will visit historical sites, such as the Revolution of 1911 and the war against Japan, visit Wuhan University, Hunan University, and Fudan to communicate with Chinese students.
After 2 years of brutal crackdowns on private businesses, the Chinese government vows to protect its reputation. On March 28, Xin Dui, an official with the Cyberspace Administration of China, warned of a special operation to clear out malicious online remarks that may tarnish businesses and entrepreneurs. According to Reuters, she said false information against enterprises and entrepreneurs, especially private enterprises and private entrepreneurs, appears from time to time, damaging the brand image of enterprises. She lamented that such practices disrupt companies' regular production and operation, resulting in economic losses. Shen added that the government would severely punish the behavior, including those who try to seek illegal benefits from engaging in the act. The announcement came as new Chinese Premier Li Qiang has been launching a charm offensive to win over confidence from the private sector. At his debut press conference this month, he reportedly said that business conditions would improve and that all types of firms would be treated fairly. He noted that some baseless claims in society regarding private firms had caused anxiety for entrepreneurs. To some, the damage has already been done. One anonymous executive at a leading Chinese tech company told Nikkei Asia, "The fact is that you never know what will happen in China next." The person added, she said in late 2018 that the private sector can set their mind at ease and the private sector in China will only grow bigger. But then he started the 2-year-long crackdown in the tech sector. Lin Haobao, an analyst at consultancy Trivium China, viewed that such rhetoric from the CAC won't suffice much. He said, "In fact, policymakers have been talking up confidence for months, but I don't think this comment from CAC matters. If CAC could relax its data policy, that'd be a different story."
Hong Kong has had the first ever demonstration in 3 years since the introduction of Beijing's National Security Bill. It is an authorized protest, and demonstrators are restrained by a set of conditions. According to the South China Morning Post, the people gathered to oppose a land reclamation plan in the city's Xuanquang O-Town at around 11 a.m. on March 26th. While around 300 people registered to attend the rally, the police capped the number at 100 and 80 managed to show up. With heavy police surveillance, they had to wear number tags around their necks and were banned from wearing masks. The SCMP said the police argued it was to prevent criminals from sneaking alongside protesters and instigating illegal and violent acts. Those who wished to wear masks were told to provide proof of reasonable excuse to law enforcement before the rally. AFP added that their place cards were also examined for politically sensitive and seditious language. A cordon separated the media and the marchers. An attendee, who was also a retired civil servant, called it a shame parade. The person told AFP, "This is intimidation, but what can we do? Now even trying to take a breath of fresh air may endanger national security." A 49-year-old journalist from England, James Ockenden, told SCMP the government is clamping down on protests now. Because, you see, we have to wear numbers around our chests. It's humiliating. I really don't want to see that. This is the first march against a government proposal since 2020 following the dismantling of all COVID-19 rules earlier this year.